The digital world is a realm of curated perfection. On screen, life is polished, relationships are flawless, and success seems just a click away. But behind the glowing pixels and carefully constructed personas, human nature and all its messy complexity remains unchanged. This is a story about what happens when the curated world of online influence collides with the oldest sins of mankind. It's a story of a charismatic pastor, a beautiful streamer, and her calculating husband, a triangle of deception where faith was a currency, love was a commodity, and a hidden camera became the instrument of a devastating downfall. The case file begins not in a place of worship, but in the sleek, competitive world of online commerce. Our subjects are Ryan and Chloe Miller, a married couple from a quiet suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. Before the world retreated indoors during the pandemic, the Millers had poured their life savings into a boutique business specializing in high-end, custom-made mahogany furniture. Their target clientele were the wealthy, those for whom price was no object and craftsmanship was paramount. Mahogany, a resource that is finite and precious, was more than just wood. It was a statement of status. But as lockdown swept across the nation, the foot traffic to their showroom dwindled to nothing. The scent of polished wood was replaced by the stale air of uncertainty. Faced with impending financial ruin, Ryan, a man with a keen mind for business logistics, made a pivotal decision. They had to pivot to the online marketplace. The face of this new venture would be his wife, Chloe. Chloe possessed a natural charisma that the camera loved. With a radiant smile and an effortless ability to connect with people, she was born for the screen. To prepare for her new role, she immersed herself in the world of live streaming. She studied the techniques of top influencers, learned the art of makeup that popped on screen, and perfected a friendly, engaging persona. For hours each day, she would go live, showcasing the deep, rich grain of their mahogany tables and the elegant curves of their handcrafted chairs. She wasn't just selling furniture. She was selling a lifestyle, an aspiration, and it worked. Slowly at first, then with gathering momentum, Chloe Miller became a recognized name within the niche community of luxury home goods. Her stream was a comforting, aspirational space. But to truly succeed in the cutthroat world of streaming, you need more than just a consistent audience. You need whales. In the parlance of the internet, a whale is a top-tier customer. A patron whose spending power is so immense it can single-handedly make or break a streamer's month. They are the modern-day Medicis, and their patronage earns them a special status, a place of honor in the digital court. In late 2020, a whale swam into Chloe Miller's stream. His username was simple, unassuming, but his presence was anything but. Every time he entered the chat, the digital cash register began to sing. A mahogany desk here, a set of dining chairs there. His purchases were extravagant, impulsive, and always accompanied by generous digital gifts that sent Chloe's name shooting up the platform's leaderboards. He quickly became her #1 supporter, the king of her channel. This status wasn't just a title, it was a symbol of financial might and a claim to a special relationship with the host. Naturally, Chloe was attentive. He was, after all, her most important customer. After a particularly large purchase, he sent her a private message. The request was straightforward. He wanted her personal contact information, her private WhatsApp number, to discuss future custom pieces. On the surface, it was a reasonable business request. A client of this magnitude might want a more direct line of communication. To maintain the relationship, Chloe agreed. With that single click, a boundary was crossed. The professional relationship between seller and client began to bleed into something personal, something more intimate. Their chat started as discussions about wood finishes and delivery schedules, but soon drifted into more personal territory. We cannot know for certain who initiated the shift. Was it a subtle suggestion from Chloe, ever the savvy salesperson, or was the man on the other end already captivated by the alluring image she projected on screen? What the case file makes clear is that the tone of their messages grew increasingly flirtatious. Each notification on Chloe's phone carried a spark of intrigue, a hint of something forbidden and exciting. The man was charming, attentive, and his lavish spending on her channel made her feel seen, desired, and powerful. The lines blurred, and within 2 months, the digital fantasy was yearning to become a physical reality. They decided to meet. On February 24, 2021, Chloe Miller told her husband she was taking a short business trip to Dallas, Texas to meet a potential supplier. Instead, she boarded a flight to meet her mysterious benefactor. Their rendezvous point was a luxurious hotel in the heart of the city. As she waited in the opulent lobby, she finally came face to face with her whale. He was not the dashing, anonymous tycoon she might have imagined. He was older, with a clean-shaven head and a calm, authoritative demeanor. He introduced himself as Samuel Thorne, and he was the lead pastor of the Cornerstone Fellowship, one of the largest and most influential megachurches in Texas. For a moment, Chloe might have been taken aback. A pastor? But any surprise was quickly superseded by the core of their transaction. To her, his profession was irrelevant. The only question that mattered was whether the lifestyle he promised, the financial security he represented, was real. And in that lavish hotel suite, it certainly felt real. Here were 2 people, both living double lives. A married woman, a mother, pretending to be on a business trip. A man of God, a shepherd to a flock of thousands, seeking carnal pleasure far from his pulpit. The cognitive dissonance was immense. Yet it was no match for the raw, human desires that had brought them together. In that hotel room, any pretense of piety or fidelity dissolved. Their connection, forged in the digital ether, was consummated in a very real, very physical way. After their weekend together, they lay entangled in the high thread count sheets, talking. A bond was formed, not of love, but of shared transgression. This was not a one-time mistake. It was the beginning of an affair. Their communication via WhatsApp and phone calls became a daily ritual, a secret world they inhabited away from their public lives. They were playing with fire, blissfully unaware that the inferno they were stoking would eventually consume them all. And they had no idea that a third party was about to discover their secret. For over a year, the affair continued, a carefully guarded secret. But secrets, especially in the digital age, have a tendency to leave a trace. In April of 2022, Ryan Miller, Chloe's husband, picked up her phone. Perhaps it was a random impulse, a fleeting suspicion, or simply a case of needing to look something up. What he found was a bombshell. He scrolled through a universe of messages, a detailed archive of his wife's betrayal. The flirtatious texts, the intimate photos, the logistics of their secret meetings with the man she called her whale. The file photos of the investigation show a man whose world has been shattered. The initial raw emotion was pure rage, a primal need for revenge. His first thought was to drive to Dallas and confront this man, this Pastor Samuel Thorne, to reclaim his honor through violence. But as the initial shock subsided, the businessman's mind took over. Rage was an emotion. It was unprofitable. Violence was a liability. He was a strategist, a man who understood leverage and calculated risks. He realized that going to Dallas unprepared was foolish. He needed intelligence. Who was this man really? He pressed Chloe, demanding every detail about her lover. Fearing his wrath, Chloe confessed everything. She told him that her lover wasn't just some rich businessman. He was Pastor Samuel Thorne, a man of immense public stature. This was not just any pastor. Pastor Thorne was a pillar of the community. He had risen through the ranks of his denomination, graduating from a prestigious seminary before taking the helm of the Cornerstone Fellowship. Under his leadership, the church had grown into a sprawling campus with thousands of members and a multi-million-dollar annual budget. He was more than a spiritual leader. He was a CEO of a religious corporation. He served on civic boards, advised politicians, and his sermons were broadcast to a massive online audience. His reputation was his entire world. As Ryan absorbed this information, something inside him shifted. The anger didn't vanish, but it was overshadowed by a new, electrifying emotion: opportunity. This wasn't a personal crisis anymore. It was a potential gold mine, a beautiful streamer, and a famous pastor. The scandal was explosive. The leverage was absolute. He looked at his wife, not with the eyes of a betrayed husband, but with the cold, calculating gaze of a business partner. The shame, the hurt, the betrayal, he compartmentalized it all. Money, he told her, was the only thing that mattered now. He then laid out a plan, a dark, twisted, but meticulously crafted plan. He wasn't going to destroy the pastor. He was going to tear down the church. He was going to monetize him. We can only speculate on Chloe's state of mind. Was she coerced by a domineering husband? Was she racked with guilt and willing to do anything to atone? Or was she, on some level, a willing participant, drawn into the thrill of the scheme? Whatever her motivation, the record shows she agreed to play her part. She became the bait in her husband's trap. Following Ryan's script, Chloe contacted Pastor Thorne. She told him she missed him, that she craved another secret rendezvous. As Ryan had predicted, the pastor's desire overrode any sense of caution. He was not afraid. He was eager. He agreed to meet her, but this time, Chloe insisted he come to them. She suggested a romantic getaway, a place where they could be truly alone, a hot springs resort in Miami, Florida, far from his church, far from her home, a neutral ground for their illicit passion. On July 27, 2022, Pastor Samuel Thorne boarded a flight from Dallas to Miami, his heart filled with anticipation. He was walking into an ambush. Ryan Miller's plan unfolded in 3 distinct phases. Step 1 was the lure, which Chloe had executed perfectly. Step 2 was the setup. Before the pastor arrived, Ryan checked into the same resort. In the room Chloe would share with Thorne, he installed a series of tiny, high-definition spy cameras strategically placed to capture every angle. Step 3 was surveillance. Ryan holed up in his own room, a laptop open in front of him, watching a live feed of the trap he had set. When Pastor Thorne arrived, Chloe played her part with unnerving perfection. She was passionate, attentive, and utterly convincing. The pastor, lost in the throes of his desire, had no idea that his every move, every intimate moment was being recorded, archived, and analyzed by the husband he was betraying, watching from a room down the hall. The performance, as Ryan would later describe it, was a resounding success. Pastor Thorne left Miami feeling satisfied and invigorated. The Millers left with their prize, a crystal-clear video recording of the pastor's transgression. For them, this wasn't just a sordid home movie. It was a blank check. It was a key to a vault. But Ryan was patient. The final act of his plan required a delicate touch. He waited for 2 months, letting the pastor return to his life, to his pulpit, to the illusion of safety. Then he and Chloe flew to Dallas. Chloe made the call. She was in town, she said, and wanted to see him. She invited him to her hotel room for a repeat of their Miami tryst. The pastor, his ego likely telling him that his prowess was irresistible to this younger woman, readily agreed. He walked into that hotel room expecting pleasure. What he found was judgment. This time, when he opened the door, he saw Chloe, but she was not alone. Standing beside her was her husband, Ryan, his expression a mask of cold composure. Pastor Thorne was a man used to being in control. His first instinct was denial. He feigned ignorance, claiming his relationship with Chloe was purely professional, a mentorship. But Ryan had anticipated this. He simply smiled, a chilling, predatory smile. "I believe the phrase is," he said calmly, "you won't cry until you see the coffin." He then turned to his laptop and pressed play. The pastor watched in horror as the screen filled with images of himself and Chloe in the Miami hotel room. Every denial, every lie was rendered moot by the irrefutable high-definition proof. The color drained from his face. The man of God was trapped. The negotiation began. This was a world Pastor Thorne understood. He was a fundraiser, a deal maker. He knew that some problems required not prayer, but payment. He also knew the value of his reputation. It was priceless. In that first round of negotiations, he was surprisingly generous, a throwback to his days as a whale in Chloe's stream. He immediately offered them a substantial sum. After a brief negotiation, they settled on a figure: $200,000, $100,000 in cash, and another $100,000 in the form of custom mahogany furniture orders from the Miller's business. The transaction was swift. Pastor Thorne, desperate to make the problem disappear, made the wire transfer from his personal accounts that very day. The Millers walked out of that hotel room with the equivalent of nearly 7 years of the median American household income. They paid off their debts, splurged on luxuries, and for a moment, it seemed their audacious plan had worked flawlessly. But if the story ended there, it would simply be a sordid tale of blackmail. It doesn't, because greed, once fed, is never satisfied. As Ryan Miller enjoyed his newfound wealth, a thought began to fester in his mind. The pastor had paid the $200,000 so easily, so quickly. There was no hesitation. To Ryan, this didn't signal desperation. It signaled depth. The man must have access to far more wealth, tens of millions perhaps. The $200,000 wasn't a settlement. It was just an opening bid. So in February of 2023, 7 months after the first shakedown, Ryan Miller returned to Dallas. This time, he came alone. Pastor Thorne knew exactly why he was there. He refused to meet, hiding within the sprawling grounds of his church, hoping Ryan would simply give up. But Ryan was relentless. He began contacting the pastor's associates, his friends, letting them know that if Thorne didn't meet with him, the whole sordid story would find its way onto the internet, destroying the pastor's reputation forever. The threat worked. Pastor Thorne knew he couldn't hide. Enraged but cornered, he agreed to negotiate, but not directly. He sent one of his church elders, a trusted deacon, to act as his intermediary. After several tense rounds of negotiation, they reached a new agreement. The pastor would pay an additional $500,000. The payment would be structured: $200,000 immediately, with the remaining $300,000 paid in 2 annual installments of $150,000. But this time, Pastor Thorne, perhaps recalling his seminary studies on law and ethics, had a new strategy. He was no longer just a victim. He was collecting evidence. He insisted that the agreement be put in writing. He drafted a formal settlement document stating that the $500,000 was a final payment to resolve a personal dispute, and in return, all compromising materials would be destroyed. Ryan, blinded by the ease with which he was acquiring vast sums of money, saw no harm in it. Compared to the hard work of selling furniture, this felt like printing money. He signed the document. The pastor's representative immediately transferred the first $200,000 into Ryan's account, Ryan Miller flew home from Dallas victorious. He now had a total of $400,000 in cash and a legally binding agreement for another $300,000. He had successfully turned his wife's infidelity into a $500,000 enterprise. He was savoring his triumph when there was a knock on his door. It was the police. What had happened? The signed agreement. For Pastor Thorne, it was a double-edged sword. For weeks, he must have agonized over his decision. Continuing to pay the Millers would subject him to a lifetime of potential extortion. They could come back again and again, an endless drain on his finances and his soul. He had studied the law. He knew the difference between a settlement and extortion. The signed agreement, which he had insisted upon, was his proof. It was a receipt for a crime. In a move that can only be described as a high-stakes gamble, Pastor Samuel Thorne walked into a police station and confessed. He laid out the entire story of the affair and the subsequent blackmail, presenting the signed agreement as his primary evidence. He chose to risk public humiliation to escape a private hell. The authorities moved quickly. With the pastor's testimony and the financial records of the transfers, they had everything they needed. Warrants were issued, and Ryan and Chloe Miller were arrested and charged with felony extortion. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic for everyone involved. The district attorney's office classified the case as a major felony, given the exceptionally large sum of money involved. The legal filings named Ryan Miller as the mastermind and Chloe Miller as an accomplice, though her role as a co-conspirator still carried a severe potential sentence. For Pastor Thorne, his decision to go to the police was a Pyrrhic victory. The story exploded in the media. His church immediately placed him on an indefinite leave of absence from all pastoral duties. The man who preached morality from the pulpit was now the subject of tabloid headlines and public ridicule. His immense wealth, the source of which was now under intense scrutiny, became a central question. Was it from legitimate book deals and speaking fees? Or had he been dipping into the church's coffers? The internet, the very tool that had created this mess, began to dig. Sleuths found Chloe's old streaming accounts. Photos of her, beautiful and vivacious, circulated widely, fueling the public's fascination. The key search terms were a cocktail of modern scandal: streamer, pastor, affair, blackmail. When we analyze this case from a psychological and ethical standpoint, there are no heroes. All three individuals were ensnared by their own form of greed. Pastor Thorne, a man in a position of immense trust, was consumed by a greed for the flesh, a lust that made him betray his vows, his congregation, and his own teachings. His fall from grace serves as a stark reminder that no one is above temptation. Chloe Miller was driven by a greed for material comfort and validation. She traded her marital fidelity for the attention of a wealthy benefactor, and then allowed her own humiliation to be weaponized for profit. And then there is Ryan Miller. His greed was perhaps the most chilling. He subverted the most profound human emotions, betrayal and jealousy, and transformed them into a cold, transactional business plan. He looked at his wife's body not as that of his partner, but as an asset. He looked at her shame and saw a product to be sold. One has to question the very foundation of a marriage where such a scheme could even be conceived, let alone executed. The case is a dark parable for our times. It reveals the hollowness that can lie beneath the polished surfaces of public life and online personas. It's a profound lesson on the corrosive power of greed, and a warning that the pursuit of easy money and forbidden pleasures often leads to a prison of one's own making. All three of them sought something for nothing, and in the end, they all lost everything that truly mattered, becoming cautionary tales in the unforgiving court of public opinion. The legal proceedings are ongoing. The precise source of the pastor's fortune remains under investigation, but the verdict on their character has already been delivered. The story is over, but the lessons it imparts about integrity, trust, and the high price of low morals will linger for a long time to come.